pleasure to be here to talk about technology. The book on the slide is the 15th edition of the Communication Technology Update. We've been doing this since 1992, trying to keep track of all the developments in computers, consumer electronics, telephony, networking, satellites, virtually anything we can find out that seems to be making a splash. So we put it out every 2 years. The new edition just came out last August, and then we constantly update online. So what I'm going to do is go through what I see as being the really big things to watch. And when you're looking for a show, obviously the place you start is Las Vegas. That's where we had the Consumer Electronics Show just a couple of weeks ago. And the eye candy there was the virtual reality that Larry was talking about. People were wowed, and there were dozens of different systems all competing with each other. There is some there. There's more eye candy in the automotive telematics area. We're going to talk about that. So we're right on target there. Drones were the biggest thing last year. They were still there, but not as prominent this year. So let's drill down into virtual reality. As Larry said, there was a huge wave. He mentioned 10 years ago. Actually, it was in the 1990s, 1994 and 1995, you had the first wave of virtual reality. And everyone said, this is going to be new. We had great novels, Snow Crash by Stevenson, for example, that talked about how we were going to enter and navigate virtual worlds. And then it all kind of disappeared except in two areas, in architecture and in training. We know flight simulation, the importance of virtual reality and flight simulation. Anybody who saw the movie Sully saw the use of the simulators in doing the forensic analysis of what happened to that famous flight. This is not anything new. That's a working part of those two industries and is creeping into other industries. In the military, VR simulations are a regular part of life. It's a lot cheaper to have somebody shooting an electronic weapon than firing a real weapon with real bullets if you're trying to train them. And again, the Army's known that. But what we have now is an emerging markets, and instead of seeing this as being a mass market, the focus right now is primarily on gaming. Your primary video game makers are looking for ways to integrate their consoles with the headsets. There are some problems there. If we go back to the 1990s, Nintendo had a video game called the Virtual Boy. It was supposed to be a head-mounted display, but it was too heavy to wear on your head, so it has to sit on a table. And so you have to put your head into it. And it was still so immersive, even in monochrome. And when I say monochrome, that wasn't even black and white, it was red and white. It was so immersive that they had to put circuitry in that automatically shut it off after 15 minutes. Otherwise, people would stay in that virtual world and would end up with all kinds, literally aches and pains. I bought one of them just to have it. The manual has more warnings and precautions than it has instructions on how to use it. Now that's 20 years ago. We've got to see how far we've come. There are, again, these great games out there, but there are a lot of physical limitations we need to watch. But there's no question that this is emerging as an entertainment technology to watch and is going to require and Larry and I will talk about this in a few minutes, has the potential to require a lot of bandwidth. Journalists are also picking it up. The New York Times has done a series of pieces trying, when they go to an event, not just to capture the event with photographs and with stories, but try to give the entire field of view so you can navigate the event. The question of whether these are going to still be around in a few years is up in the air. If we go back just 5 years, the hottest technology was 3D TV. An announcement was made earlier this week that the last two companies making 3D TVs, Sony and LG, are going to stop making them. So that wave came and went. We'll have to watch this closely to see what happens. Closely related to virtual reality, but totally different, is augmented reality. The idea that we can map any physical space and then overlay a cyberspace on it. So as I'm looking at you, if I have the right glasses it can look at each of you and in my lens, give me your names. Or I can be looking at a sign and with my phone, and if you want to try this, go to Moe's. Welcome to Moe's. Get a burrito and then put their app on your phone. And when you hold their app up to any of the signs in the stores, the sign comes to life and starts to do things. Well, augmented reality is a lot of fun to play with, but it has great potential. We saw that last summer with the Pokemon Go, a game that worldwide was implemented and captured more users in a short amount of time than any technology ever. It was the fastest diffusion of any single application. And then it didn't go away. We can still capture our Pokemon. I mean, there may be a Pikachu right back there where Larry is. I don't know. I just know I've got my Charmander, so I'm happy. So that was a very unsophisticated first generation game. The biggest thing we need, if we're going to use this, is we need to engage the same creative people that took the first generation Pong games and helped us create things today. Call of Duty, Madden, what year are we up to? 2017? Whatever year Madden is on. The games have become more sophisticated. We can do that with the augmented reality too. That's not going to be the big use. Signage is going to be a tremendous thing. Navigation. As you're driving in a car, your windshield will become a different world with projections. And translation. Imagine going anywhere in the world and having, either with your glasses or with the phone, looking at any sign and having it automatically translated. That's technology we have today. So we're going to see this, but in order for this to work, we have to realize that this is the other things Larry was talking about, implicates so many technologies. You've got to have the GPS, you've got to have the networking, you've got to have the storage, there has to be some user identification, and then you have to have a business objective. So these all have to work together. So that's a growing technology. Television, in the meantime, we think, well, that's dull and boring. No. Television is still taking up more time for the average, not just the average American, the average person around the world, and consuming more money. It is the largest single advertising revenue producer, much bigger than online, still. I don't know how much longer that will go on, but still TV is the biggest one. And there are more different ways to consume television. If you look at how people are consuming it, Netflix, that's the dark red bar, it's not very big. The bright red bar is just watching television the traditional way. And we can even see radio, the green bar. Radio is still being viewed or being listened to many, many hours a day. So we have to realize the patterns of audience consumption aren't changing, but the technology behind it is changing significantly. Let's look specifically in television. The biggest spotlight at the Consumer Electronics Show in view of what people are buying right now is the change in television. And there are two big innovations coming simultaneously that are very different. 4K television, which provides 4 times the information in a single picture, and HDR, which provides a lot more information in each pixel. Now, I want to start out by saying the place you're going to encounter these is not going to be in your living room. The place you're going to encounter them first is the movie theater, because these technologies are changing cinema. It is easier to adopt the cameras, and in adopting the cameras, adopting the editors and everything else for films, and give you that cinematic experience. At the same time, by the way, we need to note that the cinemas have changed. They are still doing 3D movies, animation and action movies, that's it. But they are also now electronically connected. So we can use these cinemas to broadcast any event. Sporting events, we can do it for concerts, we can do it for political events. So you're going to see a rebirth in the next few years of the uses of those boxes that we call theaters and how we can display different content. Well, if we look at 4K TV, it's critical to see how it's grown. People are buying it. If you go into Best Buy today, the salesperson's not going to walk you up to an HD TV first. They'll walk you to the 4K because the price is comparatively low. What they're not going to tell you is there's no content. Nobody's doing the 4K. So you have this very high quality screen that is now in about 10% of US homes, and by the end of this year, probably will be up to 18 to 20%. It's a premium product. It gives something new for them to sell. The issue, though, is when you're looking at the resolution, it's a simple matter of physics. Unless you are closer to the screen than 2.5 screen heights, you can't see the difference between that and the older type of high-definition TV. But you know what? For a difference of $100, is it really going to make a difference? So 4K is penetrating. Once we get true 4K distribution, that's going to be another challenge, because if you have 4 times the pixels that you have to light up, you need to have more information. Now, it's not 4 times the information because the compression technology is used. It's closer to 1.5 to 2 times, depending upon how fast the action is moving. Right now, the only way you get 4K TV is online. DirecTV is experimenting with it. Netflix wants to provide some content, but very little content other than cinematic content is being produced in 4K. But cable television is looking at how to distribute it, and broadcasters are looking at a new broadcast standard. Again, we're looking probably 2020 before anything happens. HDR is a little more exciting. The HDR is high dynamic range. What you have here is, instead of giving you more pixels, let's take each pixel and give it more information. So you're darker, you have more ranges between black and white, greater contrast range, you have more color options, so you can have a more vivid picture. Again, you need more bandwidth, and the program has to be encoded from the beginning in order for the receiver to actually see a difference. Cinemas is where this is being picked up. The question is, will viewers be able to see a difference? Keep in mind, the cinematic experience is this closed room with no external light coming in. The average person watches television in a room with a great deal of ambient light. And the ambient light, anything reflecting off the screen, anything else will affect it. But they don't care. The real interesting thing is we're not having an improvement in the frame rate. We're still using, for the most part, 30 frames per second TV. The exception is, once in a while, some people are still using the 720 standard, which is 60 frames a second. If we get up to 120 frames a second, everything will look more realistic, although viewers tend to push back when things get too realistic on television. The other thing we have to worry about in television is OTT, over-the-top television. These are the skinny bundles that are going to steal market share from cable TV. We started out with Dish with its Sling option, little package of 20 channels for $20 a month. We have Hulu with its ability to watch the Hulu only. We have Netflix with its ability to access movies and all of the House of Cards, Orange is the New Black, the other Netflix only shows. DirecTV is in the game now with DirecTV Now. The interesting development from a user perspective is, rather than cutting the cord with people adopting these and then dropping something else, they're adding these on and keeping cable television. So the question is, instead of having skinny bundles, what we're going to have is multiple bundles. So people are using television multiple ways. It complicates the interface a little, but again, a lot more bandwidth is implicated in the delivery of this. There's one big event coming up in over-the-top television we have to watch for. CBS All Access. Les Moonves has done an incredible job with CBS in trying to keep it at the cutting edge. He's got lots of content. They did an original version of Big Brother in the fall. Anybody see that? Big Brother Over the Top? Yeah, I didn't either. And I watch Big Brother. I like the idea of going away for a summer, just being locked in a house with nothing to do but talk to people. Yeah, I can do that. Anyway, they've got The Good Fight, which is a sequel to The Good Wife that's coming out in February. That might get a few viewers. But the big thing is in May, they're going to premiere a new version of Star Trek. A new Star Trek series that will only be available to people who have the CBS All Access service. This is going to be a make or break moment for CBS All Access. If it's successful, look for other networks to follow suit and look for even more of these over-the-top services that are premium services added on. Or it could be just CBS's shot to say we're going to be like HBO eventually. In any case, this has the potential to be a game changer. Let's shift gears. The other really big thing going on is the Internet of Things. If you look at the number of new devices that have embedded processing and embedded networking with sensors and displays so that the devices can connect to the network, this is increasing. Lots of innovations going on in medicine, for example, and other things, but you generally have an unorganized industry here. We're back in the, if any of you remember the 1970s, the early days of computers, before we had standard operating system. Apple had one operating system, Kpro had a different operating system, Commodore had its operating system, and programs from one couldn't go on another. And it wasn't, of course, until we got that famous CP/M that was going to solve all the problems, until MS-DOS came along, that we had a single OS. That's an issue with the Internet of Things. There's an issue with networks. Some use Bluetooth, some use near-field communication, some use Zigbee. This is an issue. Well, there's a little solution that's popping up that's going to bring these together. These are the personal assistants. The most popular ones are the Google Home and the Amazon series of products. I call them Alexa because that's how you address when you have it. I actually bought one for my wife and realized there's something here. We got the big one that we talk to. It sets timers for us. The old thing, just if you're cooking, you want to set a timer on the oven, you don't do that. You say, Alexa, timer 10 minutes. That's it. Now you say, well, yeah, I'm going to pay $120 for that. Think Star Trek. Anytime we were in any of the starships and you needed information, you said, computer, tell me this. We have the interface now, the voice response interface. I mean, think about that. Alexa, tell me a joke. And Alexa will tell you a joke. Alexa, tell me what the weather is in Austin today. This is stuff you can do right now. If you have a Roomba that is networked, you can say, Alexa, vacuum the living room floor. If you have a Nest thermostat, you can say, Alexa, turn up the temperature 2 degrees. This is not science fiction, this is today. We now have an interface. And Google, of course, wants to be involved in everything. You notice Google's not interrupting me. They'll get to it. Google Home will do the same thing. There'll be other competitors, but I think that Amazon and Google are ahead of the game because of the need for standardization and connecting these together. I think there's big bucks here. I think in connecting devices, this is going to give us a new reason, a new wave of everything in the house. I mean, imagine you want to preheat the oven, get rid of all the knobs. Just preheat oven, 350 degrees, and it starts. Now, this doesn't say there aren't some issues. We'll talk about that. We need to back up, though. There are two ways that the voice response works. There's a centralized, which you have with the Google Home and with the Amazon Echo, where you say something, the voice goes back to a central location, it's processed, and it gives you an answer. Requires full networking. You can also build voice recognition into individual devices. It's very simple, especially if the vocabulary is limited to things like yes and no. So you have the opportunity with very limited controls to build the voice into anything, forward, back, although I think pushing the buttons in this case is easier. You don't have the issues with privacy and security if you build the voice response into everything. But you also don't have the ability to do the control. So we have to think, what do Americans want more? Are we more concerned about privacy and security, or do we want to be in control of everything in our house? I don't know the answer to that, because the answer is we all want a little of both. But when it comes down to it, I think convenience might win. Most important thing, though, is the diffusion of these devices is going to result in a marginal increase in network demand. My experience is almost everyone who gets one, within a year they have another one, because the house is too big to just have one voice interface, and they can all connect together. And when you have your, again, I'll give an example. My wife likes her Pandora channel. She can walk in and she can get ready to ignore me while she's cooking dinner, which is a good thing to do. Just say, Alexa, play Pandora Smooth Jazz. And it starts playing. Oh, and it's good audio too. These personal assistants, again, can be revolutionary, but they can also cause us some problems. We look at it. Your house is big. How many inputs do you have to have? How many things can it do? This is Helen Mary worked this diagram up for the latest communication technology update. They can connect to your phone or your lights or your security system, you have energy management, your laundry, anything in the office. Again, I can't imagine, let's cold night. If you have an electric blanket, put the Internet of Things into the blanket so you can preheat the bed. Why not? Alexa, start the car. Alexa can do that today. One more thing, I like what Jacques Ellul said, your desirable direct implications of any technology are usually those that are anticipated, but your undesirable and your indirect are almost never anticipated. About a month ago, there was a newscaster who did a story about a kid who ordered pizza using the Alexa device. And in the news story, he used the words, Alexa, order 2 pepperoni pizzas. And in 1,000 homes in that area, Alexa heard the TV and ordered pizza. Yeah, still a few bugs to work out. Not as bad as the Tesla case Larry was talking about. Always unanticipated, undesirable impacts we have to work through. All right, so how does this affect networking? Obviously, the Internet of Things is going to put new demands on the network, both within a home or within a business, but the ISPs have to provide extra capacity. Think about all these things. Autos have to be connected. Home security has to be connected. All mobile devices have to be connected. And then, of course, you've got your personal assistants. The automotive update, I'll be very quick here. There are multiple dimensions. I picked this because this was the most complicated one I could find, showing how many different systems are being networked in a car. We could do a whole week on this, and indeed there's a conference now that just is a dashboard conference that looks at the networked automobile. But we can break it down. Navigation is what we think of first, but once we have self-driving cars, or even without that, if they're passengers, we want the network for entertainment. We want the network for information, find out what's going on in the world. It's also part of safety, and finally, operational efficiency. If you can anticipate traffic problems and route people around them, you can actually save a lot of fuel. So this is an industry that's very practical. It's not going to hurt a lot of, it's going to hurt a lot of body shops, because the new cars will stop before they'll get into a little fender bender. That's standard on about a third of 2017 cars, and by 2020 will probably be standard on almost all cars. just because it's a nice safety thing. And it costs less than those 5-mile-an-hour bumpers and does a lot more for us. So the automotive industry is evolving. In telephony, the biggest event here is the FCC's spectrum auction. FCC went to broadcasters and said, the wireless industry needs more spectrum. If you give us back your TV channels, we'll give you money. And they worked out a way to have an auction where the broadcaster said, here's how much money that we want for our TV channels. And the wireless providers could say, here's how much we're willing to pay. And they went back and forth and back and forth. Started out with an expectation that 126 megahertz nationwide would be cleared. That would have required for the broadcasters to get what they wanted about more than $80 billion. The auction is just ending right now. The end result is they're clearing 84 megahertz, and the Treasury is going to bring in about 18 billion. A little more than 10 billion of that will go to the broadcasters. The rest goes into the Treasury, and we're going to have a lot more spectrum. Now, why is this so important? It's important because the initial estimates were that the wireless providers wanted everything they could get and would pay anything for it. And instead, the wireless providers are paying a fraction, only about a quarter of what was initially estimated. That tells us that, yes, bandwidth use is growing, but there is a leveling off, and there are new efficiencies coming in. The 5G and the 6G you're going to hear a lot more about in the next 2 days. Quick update on computers, everything is turning mobile. If you are setting up Wi-Fi access in this room, and you know you're going to have 40 people in this room, how many signals do you have to handle? 40 people. 80. Yeah, minimum 80, because we know everybody has multiple devices. Everybody's got a phone and a laptop, maybe a tablet. This is network too. We have to keep that in mind. The increasing mobilization of technologies is increasing demand. Obviously, the number of smartphones and tablets still is increasing, but at a much more moderate rate. It's increasing small. The big change is the multiple devices per person. And again, free Wi-Fi is proliferating. It's becoming more of a service than a profit center. Thank you, Marriott. We still have video everywhere. People want to be entertained. We're watching on our tablets. We're watching on our phones. We're watching on big screens anytime we have. I want to end with a few mini trends. I always like to read the tea leaves and say, what are the little things? And thanks to Carrie and John Vanston for turning me on to the idea that if you find the little things, that leads to big things. I've got 4 of these for you. First, the first major telecommunication appointment was President Trump appointing Ajit Pai as chair of the FCC. This means we're going to have relative stability in communication regulation, at least for the next year. Instead of bringing in someone from the outside, someone with a lot of unknowns, we have someone that has a history, who has been active in the issues. I think there'll be a great discussion of net neutrality coming up. That's one area where we may have changes, but that's more of a stay the course. And that should be comforting to those of us who don't want as much disruption. The result of the spectrum auction, the fact that there wasn't as much demand for spectrum as people thought, and that wireless providers weren't willing to pay through the nose to get it. They got a good deal, I think. I think they got a great deal, actually. Third, the demand for the personal assistants. If you look back at Christmas, Google sold out. They offered a special, or not Google, I'm sorry, Amazon. Sold all of them. They're continuing to manufacture them. They're cheap to manufacture. Look at this as an indicator of what's happening in the household. And finally, as Larry talked about, AT&T's proposed purchase of Time Warner Whether that's allowed to go through is going to be a key indicator of what happens regulation-wise. Although I would point just from this morning's news, the latest deal is Verizon proposing to purchase Charter cable. It's not a formal purchase. It's Verizon is in exploratory talks. We'll have to watch that. So those are some mini trends to watch. That's a big overview of things going on. So, and I think I'm right at the end of my time.